My name is Karen, and at 56 years old, I thought I understood what it meant to protect your child. I gave my daughter Sophie a beautiful villa for her wedding, a gift born from love and years of hard work. It was supposed to be her sanctuary, her fresh start. But within weeks, her husband's entire family moved in and turned my daughter into their servant. He smiled at me, thinking he had won, but he had no idea how short his victory would be. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you have ever given everything for your child only to see someone take advantage, go ahead and hit that like button. And please subscribe, because what happened next will show you that sometimes one sentence is all it takes to set things right. Now let me take you back to where this all began. I have lived in San Diego, California for over 30 years. Life has not always been easy. I lost my husband David in a car accident 12 years ago. And from that moment on, it was just me and my daughter Sophie. She was 16 when her father died, and I watched her grow from a grieving teenager into a strong, beautiful woman. Those years were hard, but they brought us closer than most mothers and daughters ever get. I built a small real estate company from nothing. It started with 1 property, then 2, then 5. By the time Sophie graduated from college with her marketing degree, I had a modest portfolio and enough financial stability to give her opportunities I never had. Sophie was not just my daughter. She was my best friend, my reason for pushing through the hardest days. We had our traditions. Every summer we would take a road trip down the coast, stopping at small towns and laughing until our sides hurt. On Sunday mornings, we cooked breakfast together, pancakes with blueberries, the way David used to make them. Sophie would tell me about her work at the marketing agency, her dreams of starting her own business someday. I listened to every word, proud of the woman she had become. I always imagined her wedding day. I pictured her walking down the aisle, radiant and happy, starting a life with someone who truly deserved her. When Sophie told me she was dating someone seriously, I felt that mixture of joy and protectiveness every mother knows. His name was Brad, and she met him at a networking event 2 years ago. Brad was 30 years old, worked in IT, and had a polite smile that never quite reached his eyes. The first time Sophie brought him to dinner, I studied him carefully. He said all the right things, complimented my cooking, asked about my business. But something felt off. Call it mother's intuition, but I could not shake the feeling that Brad was performing rather than being genuine. Sophie was head over heels. She talked about him constantly, her face lighting up whenever his name came up. I saw how happy she was, and I told myself I was being overprotective. After all, no one would ever be good enough for my daughter in my eyes. Maybe I just needed to give him a chance. Brad rarely talked about his family. When I asked, he would brush it off with vague answers. His parents lived in Arizona, he said. He had siblings, but did not see them often. That was all I knew, and honestly, it should have been a red flag. But Sophie was in love, and after a year of dating, Brad proposed. The engagement ring was modest, nothing extravagant, but Sophie did not care. She showed it to me with tears in her eyes, and I hugged her tight, pushing my doubts aside. If this was what she wanted, I would support her. I just wanted my daughter to be happy. As the wedding approached, I made a decision. I owned a villa in La Jolla, a stunning property with 4 bedrooms, a sprawling garden, and a pool that overlooked the ocean. I had purchased it 5 years earlier as an investment, renting it out to vacationers. But the property had been vacant for months, and as I thought about Sophie starting her new life, an idea formed. I wanted to give her the best possible start. Instead of selling the villa, I decided to gift it to her as a wedding present. The property was worth approximately $1,200,000, a significant asset that would provide security for her future. I met with my lawyer to handle the paperwork. This is where I made a crucial decision, one that would prove to be the smartest move I ever made. I put the villa in Sophie's name only, not Brad's, just Sophie's. My lawyer agreed it was wise. California is a community property state, but gifts given to one spouse before or during marriage can remain separate property if documented correctly. I wanted to protect my daughter. If the marriage did not work out, at least she would have this house, something that was entirely hers. I did not tell Brad about this detail. I simply told them both that I was giving them a house as a wedding gift. The wedding took place in May, an outdoor ceremony at a beautiful resort overlooking the water. About 100 guests attended. It was a perfect day, sunny and warm, with Sophie looking absolutely radiant in her white dress. I cried during the ceremony, thinking of David and wishing he could see our daughter on this day. That was also the first time I met Brad's family. His parents, Larry and Diane, arrived dressed casually, which seemed odd for a wedding. Larry had a loud laugh and kept making jokes that fell flat. Diane wore too much perfume and spent most of the reception asking me questions about my properties and income. It felt invasive, but I smiled politely. Brad's sister Crystal showed up with her 2 children, 5-year-old Zoe and 3-year-old Mason. The kids ran wild during the ceremony, and Crystal barely paid attention to them. She was more interested in staring at Sophie with what I can only describe as jealousy, especially when I presented Sophie with the keys to the villa in front of everyone. Brad's younger brother Kyle slouched in the back, glued to his phone, looking completely uninterested in the entire event. He did not even congratulate Sophie. I tried to ignore my discomfort. Families come in all types, I told myself. Maybe they were just awkward in social settings. Sophie was happy, and that was what mattered. As I watched her drive away with Brad toward their new life in the villa, I hugged myself against the evening chill and whispered a prayer that everything would work out. But deep down, something whispered that this was just the beginning. Sophie and Brad left for their honeymoon in Hawaii the next day. For 2 weeks, I received cheerful text messages from Sophie. Photos of beaches, sunsets, tropical drinks with little umbrellas. She looked happy, relaxed. I let myself believe that maybe I had been wrong about Brad. When they returned, I waited a day before calling. I wanted to give them time to settle in. When Sophie answered, her voice sounded tired. "How was it, sweetheart?" I asked. "It was wonderful, Mom. Hawaii was amazing. And the house, how does it feel to be home?" There was a pause. "It's beautiful, Mom. Thank you so much for this gift. I still can't believe it's mine." But something in her tone worried me. The excitement I expected was not there. She sounded drained. "Are you feeling okay? You sound exhausted." "Just tired from the flight. We got in late last night." We chatted for a few more minutes before hanging up. I told myself she just needed rest. 1 week later, my phone rang. It was Sophie. "Mom, I need to ask you something." Her voice was uncertain. "Of course, honey. What is it?" "Brad's family is going through a difficult time. His parents lost their lease in Arizona. They need a place to stay temporarily, just for a few weeks. Brad asked if they could stay with us. I wanted to check with you first, since you gave us the house." My stomach tightened. "Sophie, it's your house. You do not need my permission. But are you sure about this?" "A few weeks can easily turn into months." "I know, Mom, but they really have nowhere else to go. Brad says we need to help family." I gripped the phone tighter. "If you are comfortable with it, then it is your decision. Just make sure you and Brad are on the same page about boundaries and timelines." "We are. Thank you for understanding, Mom." After we hung up, I sat in my living room staring at the wall. Everything in me screamed that this was a mistake. But I could not be the controlling mother who interfered in her daughter's marriage. I had to let Sophie make her own choices. 2 days later, Sophie called again. This time her voice shook. "Mom, it's not just his parents." "What do you mean?" Crystal showed up with Zoe and Mason. She said she just got divorced and needs somewhere to stay while she looks for an apartment. And Kyle came too. He said he got evicted from his place. My blood went cold. How many people are living in your house right now? 7. Larry, Diane, Crystal, Kyle, and Crystal's 2 kids. 7 people. Sophie, that house only has 4 bedrooms. I know. We are making it work. Crystal and the kids are in one room, Kyle in another. Brad's parents in the 3rd. Brad and I still have the master. And how long are they planning to stay? They said they are looking for places. It should not be more than a month. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath. Sophie, you need to set clear boundaries. Make sure they know this is temporary. I will, Mom. I promise. But I heard the resignation in her voice. She was not going to push back. She was too kind, too eager to please. I am going to come visit this weekend, I said. I want to see how you are settling in. Okay, Mom, that would be nice. That night, I barely slept. Images of Brad's family taking over Sophie's home played in my mind. I told myself I was overreacting, but Saturday could not come fast enough. Saturday morning, I drove to the villa. The 30-minute drive felt like hours. As I pulled up to the property, my heart sank. The front yard, which had always been pristine, was scattered with children's toys. A deflated beach ball sat in the middle of the lawn. The hedges needed trimming. I walked to the front door and knocked. It took several minutes before anyone answered. When the door finally opened, Kyle stood there in boxer shorts and a stained t-shirt, holding a can of beer. It was 10:30 in the morning. "Oh, you're Sophie's mom," he said flatly. "Come in, I guess." He did not step aside to let me in properly. I had to squeeze past him. The smell hit me first. Stale food, dirty laundry. Something sour I could not identify. The beautiful living room I had furnished so carefully was destroyed. Dishes were piled on the coffee table. Laundry was draped over the back of the sofa. The television blared a sports channel at full volume. Larry and Diane sat on the couch, still in their pajamas, watching the game. Neither stood up when I entered. "Oh, hi, Karen," Diane said without looking away from the screen. "Sophie's in the kitchen." No offer to sit, no polite greeting, just a dismissive wave. I walked through the house, my anger building with every step. The hallway had scuff marks on the walls. Someone had left wet towels on the hardwood floor, warping the wood. The dining table was covered in coloring books, crayons, and what looked like dried cereal. When I reached the kitchen, I found Sophie standing at the sink, scrubbing a tower of dirty dishes. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore sweatpants and an old t-shirt. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Sophie," I said softly. She jumped, spinning around. "Mom, I didn't know you were here already." I walked over and hugged her. She felt thinner. "Honey, what is going on? Just cleaning up from breakfast. Everyone had different requests this morning, so it took a while." I looked at the mountain of dishes. "How many pans did you use?" "Well, Larry wanted scrambled eggs. Diane wanted them over easy. Crystal's kids wanted pancakes. Kyle wanted bacon and hash browns. Brad left early for work, so he just grabbed coffee." "And where is everyone else while you're doing all this?" Sophie glanced toward the living room. "They're relaxing. It's the weekend." "Sophie, why are you doing all of this alone? They should be helping." She turned back to the sink. "They're guests, Mom. I have to take care of them." "Where's Brad?" "He had to go into the office. Some emergency project." I wanted to grab her shoulders and shake some sense into her, but I kept my voice calm. "This is not right, Sophie. They should be contributing, not making you their maid." "It's fine, Mom. Really. They'll find places soon, and this will all be over." But it was not fine. I could see it in her slumped shoulders, in the way she would not meet my eyes. My daughter was drowning, and no one was throwing her a lifeline. I stayed for lunch. Sophie cooked for everyone. 9 people total, including me. She made sandwiches, a salad, cut up fruit. It took her over an hour. The whole time no one offered to help. Crystal sat at the table scrolling through her phone. Kyle wandered in, grabbed a sandwich, and left without a word of thanks. Larry complained that there was not enough mayo. After lunch, everyone left their plates on the table and dispersed. Sophie immediately started clearing. "Let me help," I said, grabbing plates. "You don't have to, Mom." "I want to." We washed dishes side by side in silence. Through the window, I could see the pool. It was cloudy, filled with floating leaves and toys. No one had cleaned it in weeks. When we finished, I asked Sophie to come outside with me. We walked to the far corner of the yard where no one could hear us. "Sophie, this has to stop." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know what to do, Mom. Brad said I need to be patient. He said his family went through hard times, and we owe them our support." "You don't owe them anything. This is your house." "But Brad said it's our house now. We're married. What's mine is his." I bit my tongue. Now was not the time to tell her the truth about the ownership. I wanted her to stand up for herself first, to find her own strength. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. 3 weeks. They keep saying they're looking for apartments, but I haven't seen anyone fill out applications or go to viewings. Every time I bring it up, they say they're working on it." "And Brad, what does he say when you tell him you're exhausted?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He says I'm exaggerating. He works long hours and comes home tired. When I try to talk to him, he says I'm being dramatic." My heart broke. "You deserve so much better than this, sweetheart." "I love him, Mom. I want to make this marriage work." I held her hands. "Love should not make you feel like a servant in your own home." As I drove away that evening, I made a decision. I was not going to stand by and watch my daughter be used. If Sophie could not stand up for herself yet, I would do it for her. But I needed to be smart about it. I needed evidence. I needed a plan. The next morning, I called a private investigator named Frank. I had used his services before for background checks on potential tenants. He was thorough and discreet. "I need you to look into some people for me," I said, giving him the names of Brad's family members. "What am I looking for?" "Anything, employment history, financial records, rental history. I want to know if they're really in the difficult situation they claim to be in." 1 week later, Frank called me back with his report. What he told me made my blood boil. Larry and Diane had not lost their lease. They had sold their house in Arizona 6 months ago for $350,000. That money was sitting in their bank account. They were not looking for a new place. They were living rent-free off my daughter. Crystal had been divorced for 2 years, not recently. She received monthly alimony of $2,000 from her ex-husband, more than enough to rent a modest apartment. She had not applied for a single rental in the past month. Kyle had been unemployed for 10 months. He had not sent out a single job application. He spent his days playing video games. And Brad knew everything. Frank found text messages between Brad and Larry from before the wedding, discussing how the family would move into the villa after Sophie and Brad got married. It was planned, all of it. "They saw an opportunity and took it," Frank said. "Classic manipulation." I sat in my office staring at the report. Rage filled every cell in my body. They had used my daughter. They had planned to exploit her generosity from the very beginning. I called my lawyer, Patricia, and scheduled an appointment. "Tell me about the property ownership," I said when we met. Patricia pulled up the documents. "The villa is registered solely in Sophie's name. Brad has no legal claim to it whatsoever. Even though they're married, you transferred ownership to Sophie as a gift before the wedding. It's her separate property. In California, separate property remains separate unless it's commingled or explicitly shared." "So Sophie could legally ask them to leave?" "Absolutely. As the sole owner, she has every right to evict anyone living there without her permission. Since none of them have a lease or rental agreement, they're technically guests who have overstayed. If they refuse to leave, she can call the police and have them removed for trespassing. I smiled for the first time in days. Good. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Over the next 2 weeks, I visited the villa 4 more times. Each visit, I documented everything. I took photos of the messy yard, the dirty kitchen, the cluttered living room. I recorded conversations with Sophie where she admitted to doing all the housework, paying all the bills, cooking every meal. I also discovered that Sophie was covering the utilities groceries and even bought clothes for Crystal's kids because Crystal claimed she was waiting for her alimony check, even though Frank confirmed she received it on time every month. My daughter was being bled dry financially and emotionally, and it had to stop. I decided it was time to confront Brad. I sent him a text asking to meet for coffee. To my surprise, he agreed immediately. We met at a cafe near his office on a Wednesday afternoon. Brad walked in looking confident, almost smug. He shook my hand and sat down across from me. "So what did you want to talk about, Karen?" I did not waste time with pleasantries. "Your family needs to leave the villa." His smile faded. "With all due respect, that's between Sophie and me. And she's fine with them being there." "No, she's not. She's exhausted. She's become a servant in her own home." Brad leaned back in his chair. "That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? She's just being a good host." "A good host for 3 months. When exactly are they planning to leave?" "When they're ready. Family takes care of family, Karen." "What about your wife? Don't you care that she's working herself to the bone while your family sits around doing nothing?" His expression hardened. "Sophie is fine. You're interfering where you don't belong." That is when I played my card. The house is in Sophie's name. Only Sophie's name. Legally, she can evict all of them. Brad's face changed. The smugness drained away, replaced by shock. "What do you mean, only Sophie's name?" "Exactly what I said. I gave the villa to Sophie. Not to you. Just Sophie." "That can't be right. We're married. What's hers is mine." I shook my head. California has community property laws, but gifts given to one spouse remain separate property. I made sure of that when I transferred ownership. "You have no legal claim to that house." Brad's jaw tightened. "You manipulative." "No, Brad, I'm protective. And you've just proven I was right to be. You don't care about Sophie. You just wanted the house." He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "This conversation is over." "You have 3 weeks, I said calmly. 3 weeks to get your family out. After that, I'm taking action." Brad stormed out without another word. That evening, Sophie called me in tears. "Mom, what did you say to Brad?" "He's furious. He said you threatened him." "I told him the truth, that the house is yours and his family needs to leave. He said if I kick his family out, he'll leave me." The words hit me like a punch. This was emotional blackmail. "Sophie, if he would leave you over this, then he doesn't truly love you." "I can't lose him, Mom." "Honey, you're losing yourself. Is that worth it?" She did not answer. We stayed on the phone in silence until she finally whispered, "I have to go," and hung up. I knew I had pushed too hard. Brad would dig in now. He would manipulate Sophie even more. I needed to change tactics. I needed to be more strategic. I spent the next week preparing my final move. I gathered all the evidence, all the documentation. I consulted with Patricia on the exact legal steps, and I waited for the right moment. That moment came when Sophie mentioned that Brad's whole family would be home the following Sunday for a family dinner Brad had insisted on. Perfect. I wanted them all there. I wanted everyone to hear the truth at once. On Sunday morning, I woke up at 6. I could not eat breakfast. My stomach was in knots. I texted Patricia and Frank, confirming they would meet me at the villa at 10 o'clock. At 9:45, I pulled up to the property. Patricia arrived in her car moments later, carrying a briefcase. Frank followed in his truck. "Are you ready for this?" Patricia asked. "More than ready." We walked to the front door. I still had a key. I unlocked it and walked in without knocking. The scene inside was exactly as I expected. The family was gathered in the dining room eating breakfast. Dishes covered the table. Sophie stood at the stove flipping pancakes, her face flushed from the heat. Brad saw me first. He stood up, his expression dark. "What is this? You can't just walk in here." "Actually, I can," I said calmly. "I still have a key, and we need to talk, all of us." Larry set down his fork. "Who are these people?" "This is Patricia, a lawyer, and this is Frank, a private investigator. Everyone sit down. Now." Crystal crossed her arms. "You have no right to order us around." "Sit down," I repeated, my voice steel. Something in my tone made them comply. Even Brad sank back into his chair. Sophie stood frozen by the stove, the spatula still in her hand. I walked to the center of the room and began. "I gave this villa to my daughter as a wedding gift. I hoped it would be a home filled with love and happiness. Instead, it has become a crash pad for people who contribute nothing." Larry started to interrupt. "Now, wait just a minute." "No, you wait." I turned to face him directly. "Larry, Diane, you told Sophie you lost your lease in Arizona and had nowhere to go. That was a lie." I nodded to Frank, who stepped forward and placed a folder on the table. "You sold your house in Arizona 6 months ago for $350,000. That money is sitting in your bank account. You're not looking for a place to live. You're living here for free while hoarding your money." Diane's face went pale. Larry said nothing. I turned to Crystal. "And you? You told Sophie you just got divorced and needed temporary help. Another lie. You've been divorced for 2 years. You receive $2,000 a month in alimony. That's more than enough to rent your own apartment. But instead you're here letting my daughter cook and clean for your children while you go shopping." Crystal's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I looked at Kyle. "You haven't worked in 10 months. You haven't applied for a single job. You play video games all day while Sophie waits on you hand and foot." Kyle stared at his plate. Finally, I turned to Brad. "And you knew about this plan from the beginning, didn't you? You married Sophie to get access to this house. You brought your entire family here to mooch off her. You manipulated her into thinking she owed you all this." Brad stood up. "That's insane. This is our home. We're married. Sophie is my wife." I smiled coldly. "Actually, no. This is not your home." I nodded at Patricia. She stepped forward and placed a document on the table in front of Brad. "This villa is registered solely in Sophie's name." Patricia said, her voice crisp and professional. "Brad, you have no legal claim to this property whatsoever." Brad's face went white. "What?" "Mrs. Karen transferred ownership to Sophie before your wedding. Under California law, this is Sophie's separate property. You have no rights to it." Brad spun towards Sophie. "You knew about this." Sophie shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, I had no idea." "It's true, honey," I said gently. "I wanted to protect you. I put the house in your name only, and I'm very glad I did." Larry stood up, his face red. "You can't just kick us out. We have rights." Patricia's voice cut through his bluster. "No, sir, you don't. You have no lease, no rental agreement, and no legal standing. You are guests in Sophie's home, guests who have overstayed." Diane started crying. "Sophie, you can't do this to us. We're family." I looked at my daughter. She stood there, spatula still in hand, tears running down her cheeks. This was her moment. She needed to choose. "Sophie," I said softly, "this is your house, your decision. But you deserve to be treated with respect. You deserve to have your own home back." For a long moment, Sophie said nothing. The room was completely silent except for Diane's sniffling. Then Sophie put down the spatula. She wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "Get out," she whispered. Brad took a step toward her. "Sophie, please, let's talk about this." "Get out." Her voice was stronger now. "All of you. This is my house, and I want you out." "Sophie, you can't mean that," Crystal said. "I do mean it. I have spent 3 months cooking, cleaning, and paying for everything while you all treated me like your personal maid. I'm done." Larry tried again. "We have nowhere to go." Sophie's voice was cold now, colder than I had ever heard it. "That's not my problem. You have money. You have options. You just wanted to use me. Well, I'm done being used." Brad moved closer, his voice pleading. "Sophie, I love you. Don't do this." Sophie looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time since they married. "Did you marry me for the house?" Brad hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. "That's what I thought," Sophie said quietly. "Get your family out of my house. You have 72 hours. I stepped forward then, looking Brad directly in the eye, and said the words I had been waiting to say. "This house belongs to my daughter. You have 72 hours to leave, or I will call the police and have you all removed for trespassing." The room erupted. Diane sobbed. Larry shouted about how ungrateful we were. Crystal called us horrible names. Kyle just sat there stunned. But Sophie stood firm. "I want all of you out. Now start packing." Brad tried one more time. "Sophie, we can work this out. Just give me a chance." Sophie shook her head. "No, Brad, you had your chance. You chose your family's comfort over my well-being. You let them treat me like a servant. You knew what they were doing, and you didn't stop it. I'm done." Patricia spoke up. "I suggest you all begin making arrangements. If you're not out in 72 hours, Miss Sophie will file for formal eviction and involve law enforcement." Over the next 3 days, the house was chaos. Larry and Diane packed their belongings, muttering and complaining the entire time. Crystal screamed at Sophie every chance she got, calling her selfish and heartless. Kyle moved out silently, barely saying goodbye. Brad tried to talk to Sophie multiple times, but she refused to engage. She stayed in the bedroom while they packed, only coming out when I was there. On the 3rd day, I helped Sophie change all the locks. We watched from the window as the last of them drove away, Brad's car disappearing down the street. When they were gone, Sophie sank onto the couch and cried. I sat beside her, holding her, while she sobbed out 3 months of exhaustion, frustration, and heartbreak. The weeks that followed were difficult. Sophie filed for divorce a month later. Brad did not contest it. He knew he had no claim to the villa, and without that, he had no leverage. I visited Sophie every few days. We spent hours cleaning the house together, scrubbing away the mess Brad's family had left behind. We shampooed carpets, repainted walls, cleaned out the pool. Slowly, the villa started to look like a home again. Sophie started therapy. She needed help processing what had happened, understanding how she had been manipulated. Her therapist helped her see that love should never make you feel small, that relationships should build you up, not tear you down. She also started taking care of herself again. She joined a yoga class and met new friends. She threw herself back into her work at the marketing agency, and her boss noticed her renewed energy. Within 2 months, she got a promotion. One Saturday afternoon, about 3 months after Brad and his family left, Sophie and I sat on her patio drinking iced tea and watching the sunset over the ocean. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, Mom," she said quietly. "You loved him. Love can blind us sometimes." "I should have listened to you." I squeezed her hand. You're listening now. That's what matters. Thank you for protecting me, for putting the house in my name. If you hadn't done that, but I did, and you stood up for yourself when it mattered most. I'm so proud of you, Sophie. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm going to be okay, aren't I? You're going to be more than okay. You're going to be amazing. And she was. Over the following months, I watched my daughter transform. She became stronger, more confident, more sure of herself. She set boundaries in all areas of her life. She learned that saying no was not selfish, it was self-respect. She eventually started dating again, but this time she moved slowly. She asked questions. She watched for red flags. She protected herself. Looking back on everything I learned, something important too. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your child is not money or property. It is the courage to stand up for themselves. It is teaching them that they deserve respect and love, not manipulation and exploitation. I gave Sophie a villa, yes. But what she really gained was her freedom. She learned that she did not have to accept being treated poorly just to keep the peace. She learned that her well-being mattered more than anyone's approval. And that one sentence I spoke in her kitchen that Sunday morning, the one that told Brad's family they had 72 hours to leave or face the police. It took me less than 10 seconds to say, but it changed my daughter's entire life. Sometimes that is all it takes. One moment of clarity, one firm boundary, one sentence spoken with absolute conviction. The villa still stands in La Jolla, beautiful and peaceful. Sophie lives there alone now, and when I visit, I see a woman who knows her worth. A woman who will never again let anyone turn her into a servant in her own home. That is worth more than any piece of real estate could ever be. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up for someone you love, even when it was difficult? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to set firm boundaries with family? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who is going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and realize they are not alone. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, we share real-life stories about family relationships and finding the strength to do what's right even when it is hard. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that it is okay to protect ourselves and the people we love. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gave you something to think about. Remember, you deserve respect in every relationship. Never settle for less. Take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you in the next story.